Welcome back to another episode of Compliance Insiders. I'm your host, Roger Fendelman. With me is Jeanne Brown, a compliance expert that's been in our industry for a very long time and has a tremendous wealth of experience. She's located in Southern California, most recently with Westcom Credit Union, and she does plenty of work with First Line Compliance, our compliance company. So, Jeanne, glad to have you here. Really happy to have you here. We've got a lot to talk about. So, today we're talking about the view from the compliance officer's perspective. We have compliance officer friends all over the country that are really struggling right now. They are buried knee deep, maybe even neck deep, because we've made a complete paradigm shift in the industry. Everybody is working from home. We have loan products that are changing by the day and investor requirements that are changing. We have borrowers in the pipeline that may not be borrowers after all. We have a gigantic chilling effect on new applications by virtue of the GSEs and liquidity issues and investor requirements. So that is more than a mouthful. And during this time, we just need to figure out in survival mode, how do we do this? And so that's why you're here. You actually wrote a client newsletter for us. It's on our website, firstlinecompliance.com. I welcome everybody to go over there quickly and take a look at it, because it's basically a checklist for the compliance officer. What do you need to be focusing on today? And that's what we want to talk about. Where are your priorities? What are the most important fire drills you have to work on in order to get the most important things done and prioritized, and the rest we'll worry about. So a lot of people know how to do this, but many people don't, and they're just not quite sure which direction to turn. So just hearing from somebody like you, I think, is going to be really a welcome respite to them. So at least they know either they're on the right track, or maybe there's some things they forgot about that they should continue to focus on. So wanted to turn it over to you. Again, thanks for joining us. Really happy to have you on. So Jeanne, what do you need to be focusing on today?
Thank you, Roger. I appreciate the chance to be here and to maybe bring a little something to the table that people can focus on during this time, because you're right, there's so much going on, and there's so much that we as leaders in our organizations aren't going to be able to change in the near term, right? This whole virus, the coronavirus, and all the efforts that the governments across the globe have to make. By the time, we feel any effect one way or the other, things have moved on. So what can we focus on? What can we do? And that's kind of where I was coming from in my article in the client letter is, okay, we've sent people home to work remotely. Maybe we're fortunate as an organization, we haven't had to furlough employees, or maybe not very many. So we do still have some people that we're trying to have perform some work, perhaps remotely. So what does that look like if you're in the compliance realm? Well, first and foremost, just like every day, without a COVID-19 pandemic, watch your deadlines. Be sure that you're on top of your deadlines. These things did not go away automatically of their own accord just because there's COVID-19 around. So what you want to look for are all your filing deadlines, anything to do with your annual reports, financials, your bond renewals, insurance policy renewals, your quarterly call reports on the NMLS. Make sure that all the trains run on time when it comes to meeting those deliverables, to meeting those deadlines. Now, in some instances, extensions have been granted. The government does try to pay attention to the fact that this is not business as usual right now. So for example, the NMLS has extended the quarterly call report filing deadline. You no longer have to file by May 15th for your first quarter data. You can file by June 14th and still be considered to be within compliance. And you can go to the NMLS Resource Center. They've put up a special COVID-19 resources page. Go to that page. There's a chart right on there that lets you know of all the variety of filings that now go through the NMLS, the call reports and a couple of others. The deadline has been extended to June 14th. So those are the kinds of things that you absolutely need to pay attention to. Pay attention to your licensing items. Did you have items pending for maybe application approvals or renewals? Maybe there were changes that you filed for and you've been waiting to hear back from the regulator. Get in your NMLS and look to see, have you heard back? They're still open. The regulators are still working. They may have been able to respond to your license items. Something may have cleared. Something else may have been pended. So get as much of those things done and attended to as you can, and follow up. If you're not going to be able to get it done, maybe it's your qualifying individual and they can't get out to get their fingerprints taken care of. Write back on the license item and let your regulator know what your situation is. That's a for instance.
That's a great idea, because there are just realities of this situation. And at least some regulators, especially if you already have a good relationship with them, if your past exams have gone fine, that type of thing.
Right.
A little bit of sugar goes a long way, and just say, look, this is the situation we're in, and we just need a little more time. And that can, if it works, great.
I have always found that regulators, examiners are generally pretty open if it looks like you're managing your business. And when you can come to them proactively and say, look, we know this deadline is coming up. We're going to have some difficulty meeting it. Can we have additional time? Whatever. They're generally very cooperative and willing to have that, time extended to them.
I don't know. It sounds like regulators are barking at your back door right now.
That, or it's another Amazon delivery, right? Either way, they need to watch out. So definitely take care of, your deadline. Stay on top of those things. And as you pointed out, exams also, same kind of thing. Keep the communication going. Email doesn't have a virus. It still can get delivered. So the quick couple of sentences letting them know that, you're still in there, you're still pitching, you're trying to stay on top of things is going to make a big difference. One other thing I would also add with that is be aware of the period of time that any kind of extensions, waivers, exemptions, in anything right now going on, be aware of what time period is covered. For instance, for servicers, we now have a moratorium, a 60-day moratorium on initiating or continuing to pursue foreclosures or evictions. 60 days effective March 18th at the federal level. Do you have something else going on in terms of a coverage period for a moratorium at the state level in your states where you're doing business? So you need to pay attention to those things, because once that period of time is done, it's due to COVID-19. So this is not likely to be, you should not count on it being renewed. You should not count on a further extension of time. You should be prepared to return to whatever your normal operation is for those particular functions at the end of the coverage period. And it's important to pay attention to coverage period also, because if this is in regard to something where you're going to interact with consumers, interact with borrowers, and it requires them to make a request, they may need to make that request within the covered period of time. You may need to be tracking that and know whether or not they made it before the covered period of time or after the covered period of time, so that you know whether or not you should even acknowledge any requests or how you need to interact with that borrower consumer. So I know I kind of went from NMLS and staying on with your licenses and your exams and things like that can be very administrative, but also just these covered periods, and there's more than one out there for different solutions that the government is trying to assist us with in our industry. But we need to be aware. So bring it back around to the compliance person. What can you do? Put it down on paper. Create a timeline. Here's foreclosure and eviction at federal. Here's in our different states what they're doing. Here's what we're doing for extensions on filing deadlines for these annual reports, for these quarterly call reports in the NMLS. Whatever it is, doesn't have to be super fancy, but it'll be informative, actionable information in one place that you can potentially see where are going to be the tension points. Where are we going to not have what we need in order to meet those requirements at that moment?
So let's focus on that point for just a minute, because I think that's really important for two reasons. I don't want to recreate what you just said, but one is so that you know what you have to do, and your leadership and the rest of your team knows what they have to do and what has to be accomplished. But just as important is you need to be working on creating a paper trail. If you're not doing that now, please start immediately, because down the road, you're going to have some sort of documentation to be able to show to regulators. And there's also many other risks that we won't get into today. There's definitely litigation risk for borrowers who feel they may have been mistreated during this period of time. And again, the more you can show about these are the steps that we took during this crisis, during the pandemic, to make sure that we're following the day-by-day changes of federal and state requirements and investor requirements, that's going to be your key to survival in the future.
And to your point also, Roger, we are living the biggest continuity and disaster recovery exercise we could ever hope to have through one of our own programs that they're always encouraging us to conduct at our companies, and which we sometimes struggle with having time to do. So you're absolutely right. We need to be documenting what we experienced. You know, when did we send people home remotely to work? And did we do it in a phased way? And have some touch-base meetings with your management team and your employees, for that matter, on what's working, you know, what makes sense. Don't try to do it all in one meeting.
So you're right. There's a lot of ground that you're covering. You're going from really one end to the other, because there's just so much that a compliance officer needs to take control of at this point. And so that's by design. There's no perfect way around this there's no perfect solution, but you're doing everything possible, and you're not leaving anything out. And I think it's really important to be able to say, for example, and I appreciate the update on the NMLS, on the call reports, that if you have a little bit of leeway to push those off, great. Now you can focus on other things, because in addition to this, you're getting loan level issues pop up 5 times a day, 10 times a day. Yeah. You're having management meetings and staffing meetings, and there's just so much to corral at this point.
It's a time of opportunity. It's a time perhaps for some of great challenge and trial, personally perhaps, and then, you know, professionally, obviously, because of, you know, choices that have had to be made in entire industries. But hopefully, as this all subsides, because this too shall pass, and as we return to work, we're going to find out that that might look a little different. We may find out that having our employees work remotely wasn't so hard to manage as we thought. There's some things we want to fine tune, but maybe we don't mind it. But I want to bring that back around to know when your coverage periods are. Right now, a lot of state regulators have basically said, we normally require you to register home offices as a branch, but we're not going to do that right now, because we know all you've really done is send your employee home to work, because we're just trying to keep it all together. That is going to end. And when that ends, your employees, unless you've registered their home office as a branch, are going to have to come back into the office. But maybe what you want to talk about going forward is, guys, if we thought that was working for us, how do we do that? How do we put together a plan that allows us to go back to working remotely, but including having to support registered, home offices as branches, perhaps. So, there's some things that are maybe worth looking at also, hopefully, in a hopeful way, as we come back to what is normal operations going to look like. And this is going to get worn out, so I'm going to get in there early while I have a chance, because it'll be the new normal. No matter what you think, it's the new normal. We aren't going to be exactly the same. COVID-19 is absolutely a game changer. And I think one of the ways that we can kind of help ourselves get through this is to try to take a few moments, doesn't have to spend a bunch of time, but take a few moments and try to think about what are the opportunities from this time. And some of the things that I've shared with you today, I'm hoping are kind of making you think about it, giving you some food for thought on what are those opportunities post-COVID-19.
Jeanne, this has been great. Thanks so much for being on again. I know it's been a while, and we're going to have you on again and talk about it. We'll give an update in the coming days and weeks. So Sure. Thanks so much, and we will speak again soon.
Absolutely. Thank you, Roger.
Are you a compliance insider? Then go to compliancepodcast.com immediately and join our mailing list so you never miss an episode. Got something to say? Request to be on the show. Go to compliancepodcast.com with your topic ideas. And as always, thank you for listening.